So to finish off this day, before the bar camp, we have again our great speaker Boris from Google, which is gonna tell you, after telling you how to fix your app if you have problem with classy sharks in the morning, now he's gonna tell you 10 ways to make it even better after you fixed it. So Boris, welcome, a big round of applause for him.
Thanks all. Thanks, Sebastiano. So, welcome again. Actually, it's my second talk here today. I hope I will not confuse. So, and this talk, I would say, it's my favorite talk. And to tell you the secret, the first time I delivered this talk was here at Droidcon Torino just last year. Droidcon Torino is a place of innovation. And thanks Francesco and all the folks in Synesthesia for making it possible. And this presentation is not about me. It's more about you, as a developers, the mistakes I have seen in field and put them in one place. So let's blow them up. So as you know, my name is Boris. I'm developer advocate at Google. Basically what I do is I help developers and companies be successful while working with Android. Wait a sec. Now my computer decided to fall asleep, which is great. So, 10 ways to improve your Android app. So, most of the Android apps I have seen, and the reasons why they don't perform well are due to long lunch time. This is something that your users really don't like. Janky scrolling, you know, we have seen all of them. You try to scroll a list of things, and the scrolling is slow. And, God forbid, unresponsive app. Your user is trying to do something, but the app doesn't respond. And this is bad. If you have a small app, forget these slides. And our number one item in this infamous list are activity leaks. I hope you guys all know what is activities, but I can explain. So what happens is when I have an object that points to activity, and especially when activity is not seen. As you know, activity holds its layout. Layout holds its views. Views are many, many pixels. And if you don't need an activity, please release it. And here is a code sample. I guess you should all have seen it. I have written it more than once, memory leak. So what happens here? Public class leak activity extends activity. On onCreate, we have lovely nesty manager, get instance. Another reason that singletons are tricky. Add listener, this. Now, why it's a memory leak? Because each time the nesty manager is alive, and most of the chances is going to be alive during all the application run, it will hold a reference to activity. And as we agreed before, on 3 slides before, activity is a huge, huge object. You don't want to keep it in your memory when you don't need to. And by the way, this is a fix, almost trivial. You know, in onDestroy method, just go again to that lovely nesty manager, get instance, and remove ourselves. Easy, but can save you a lot of time while debugging obscure memory issues. So another thing where I have seen these problems are static references. Please, please don't do it. Static references are dangerous because most of Android framework objects have a life cycle. Thus, in one lovely point of time, a static reference might become a dangling pointer, and now, and other really bad things. And especially this, m static activity equals static activity get activity. Once I spent 2 weeks of my life trying to change to run after a bug that my app was crashing in various times. And by the way, that was a reason. So please remember, each time you have an object pointing to activity, make sure you release it. And because we love activities, let's do another item on them. Activity leaks 2. How many of you have used the handlers inside the activity? Excellent, I see hands raising. Great. So you should listen carefully. Because what happens, if you know, in Java, there is a notion of inner class, which is connected to the outer class. And when the inner class is handler and outer class is activity, things can be tricky. And let's see why. So here we have another lovely leak sample. By the way, I also have written this code many times. You understood why it's wrong. So what do we have? We have an innocent activity, main activity, and we have a handler. And handler, you know, it's a messaging object, and it has this lovely callback, handle a message. All in all, it looks great. But you know what? What happens now? Handler pros delayed, let's say 10 minutes. So here is the problem. In the code that we have seen before, when the handler is alive, let's say for the next 10 minutes, we might not need that activity. Meaning, we are creating another memory leak. And let's see how to sort it out. The solution, let's say it's simple. We use a notion of weak references. Weak references in Java spec, Java language, is a reference that as long as it's the only reference, the object can be happily destroyed. And this is exactly the case that we need in this scenario. So, another thing is we need to declare a handler as a static inner class. Why? Because once the handler is a static inner class, it's not coupled to the activity that it lives inside. And the weak reference, as you see on mActivity, provides the right connection and with the right lifetime. When it's the only reference, then the enclosing activity can be removed. So let's see it. Here's the picture. Again, inner class handler, outer class activity. And this is a recommendation. Please prefer static to non-static inner classes. Non-static handler is activity leak. And the key thing to understand is both handler and activity have a different life cycle. For activity, what's important is the time when it's presented on the screen, while for the handler, the lifetime is the timing that it can receive and send or handle, so to speak, messages. And both classes, again, have a different lifetime. So, what can we do to avoid the activity leaks? The first thing is please remove away the static references. Use an event bus. It's really useful when you want to decouple senders to receivers. Don't forget unregistered listeners. And the fourth one is prefer static inner classes to non-static ones. For me, the best practice to remove activity leaks was doing code reviews. You know, when you do the code reviews, you have a discussion, you're trying to prove things, to understand things, and this is how you get a better concept of what's going on inside your app. Use tools, there are a bunch of these, Mat, and some of the tools that are integrated in Android Studio. And you know, the old way, print logs on callbacks, print logs on receive, on stop, and thus you can track what actually is going on. Great. And now with activities, and we are in our item number 3. Use UI thread only for UI. By the way, let's say it was built for. Meaning, or at least the symptoms, when it's wrong, the most sensitive point is scrolling. So when you test your app, or during development, and you see that the scrolling is really junky or slow, the first thing to investigate and analyze, is there any heavy I/O or computationally expensive operation running on UI thread? These are the things not to run on UI thread. Images, networking, JSON, and database access. Of course, there are way more, but these are the most painful that I have seen while helping developers to improve the performance of their apps. What to do? For database access, consider using the Loaders API, and for image networking in JSON, use libraries. They are there for a purpose. And we are to the bullet number 4 to discuss the libraries. One of the key advantages to use libraries are they already solve our problem. I have many talks with developers who came in, talk to me and say, okay, we want to run another mechanism to solve that specific problem. And usually my question is it related to the business domain of your company? Is it worth for you to gain an expertise there where other solutions exist, which are usually good? And if developing something is not promoting the company's core business, I would consider it twice. So another thing around libraries, they are not easy to build because code that does networking, image loading, and all this cool stuff, or even the numerical computation, is tricky, and it's easy to make mistakes, and it takes a long time. I don't say it's not possible, but just consider it. Is it something better that you can do with your time to promote your company stuff? And yes, it requires specialization, because every library needs to do the threading, the memory, networking. All of these things requires time, requires specialization. And as we discussed, use libraries. So thus you don't want to lose your focus and develop your solution only for a good reason. And what's the reason? To promote company's business. So sometimes I'm asked what to use. And the best thing about, or one of the best things around Android, there are always a bunch of libraries that can assist in your specific task. So the common libraries for networking or async HTTP, at least the one that I know, are Volley, OKHTTP, and Retrofit. The common libraries for image loading are Glide, Picasso, Fresco, and UIL, which is Universal Image Loader. And usually how to pick the library. Based on my choices and stuff that I have seen in field, I use the following checklist. The most important thing when I pick a library to use in my code is to make sure that it solves my problem. It also should play nicely with my current dependencies. And here are some tricks that you need to consider if your app is using dependency injection, DG1, DG2, just to make sure that there is a good match. Dex method count. Yes, nothing in life comes for free. dependencies. Usually it's a bad idea to pick a library that has an old and unsupported dependencies. Maintenance. Something which is not maintained, I would consider twice. And a feature that we introduced last year in Marshmallow, which are runtime permissions. Because, you know, permissions interrupt the user flow, and you need to think carefully. When you pick a library, is the permission that the library asks make sense to your user? Because as we discussed in Google's official documentation, don't ask for permission without a good and justified reason. With permissions, less is more. And we are on our fifth item. How many of us use JSON as part of their app to transfer business data? Great. Now let's see how to make it fast. So JSON, or a parsing, like everything else in software engineering, has a cost or a performance effect, especially when we have a large JSON converted to a class with a lots of getters and setters. And of course, all of them contribute to the DEX budget count. And the thing that we have found so far is for small JSONs, the JSON library provides the best results. However, for large JSONs or specialized ones, there is a bunch of the following solutions: the JSON library, the Instagram JSON parser. Okay, thanks. Let me repeat the question. What's the difference between small and large JSON? Lowest favorite, it depends. I would say something which is less than maybe 200K or 500K could be considered small as a rule of thumb. But it depends. Question?
With all respect to you, you are the better programmer, but why in the name of God do you use a 500 kilobyte JSON file and not a binary format? If it's so large.
It depends. Or basically, you know what? Even better. First, thanks for the question. Let me repeat it. The question is, why, in many cases, instead of using something binary, which obviously takes less place than its textual, tag-oriented JSON representation, we still stick and use the textual representation, which is known to be larger. Unfortunately, one of the answers that when I ask this question, developers as well, when I work with them, we have no choice. This is something that our servers are working with. So here, that's what we got, and we have to win with it. So as we said, for large JSONs, Instagram JSON parser provides great results, and folks in the New York Times did an amazing job with JSON plus immutable type adapters. Basically, what they did is really interesting, but it's unfortunately out of the scope of this talk, but you are welcome to browse the article. Scrolling, to sum up, please use UI thread only for UI. Something also really important is understanding concurrency APIs and their trade-offs, when to use async task, when to use service, when to use intent service. Use libraries for stuff around the memory, caching, JSON, images. Use loaders for retrieving large data sets. And we are to the item number 6. I would say it's my least favorable item, but unfortunately I see it. Android is open, the source is open, and it's written in Java, so you can use all the cool Java things, such as reflection, to understand more how the system works. However, please don't abuse the system. Please don't call private APIs by reflection. Please don't link with native methods or private native methods on the NDK and C level. Don't use runtime exec. And the best ADB shell AM to communicate with other process is not something we want to support. Use IPC standard mechanism to sort your problem. And if there is a missing API that you feel that you need it and we don't provide, please open a bug. Because it's in our interest to give you the best tools to be successful. So, oh no, please don't abuse the system, and use APIs. APIs are public. This is their goal. And deprecation. Yeah, that's a long topic. What happens is, as the time goes and the system matures and we all learn, then we remove APIs or replace them with a more better or secure version. So in one day, if you don't do something with respect to deprecation, your app will not work. And even worse, there will be no way to update APIs and tools if you stuck to previous version. So please, update your tools and dependencies. And usually there's a reason to do it. The reasons are around security, all the SSLs and other issues, correctness, performance. When we deprecate something, we really do it for a good reason. And as an example, don't use Apache HTTP connection. It was removed in Android Marshmallow, but it's still available as a Gradle dependency. Consider using HTTP URL connection instead, which provides a simple API, smaller size, and all these cool things that we really need in our app for network connections. Again, no one use APIs, refactor your dependencies, and please, please update your dependencies and tools. And we are getting to item number 8, which is bring your own gloves. Many times I have assisting developers to sort out issues between various Android devices from various manufacturers that things, unfortunately, behave differently. There's no reason to blame someone. This is rules of life. Because Android is open, so every OEM or every manufacturer is free to change things. And APIs and libraries shipped with the platform might behave differently. A sync task, which is a nice sample, or some stuff around security APIs. So in that case, consider bundling your own version of that dependency and work against it. But stuff that you need to check, as we discussed, the DEX limit, and of course, not to create a code bloat, that your APK will be huge. One of the reasons, of the key reasons that I have seen developers doing it is for security. That usually they take own fork of security library and bundle it as part of their APK. Thus, they achieve protection against rooted devices, and they can protect their own sensitive data and protocols without trusting some APIs from the system that could be broken. Because if you have your own version, then you control what's going on and not trust on some network connection that on rooted device might not be secure. And we are at item number 9, architecture. We all love to think about architecture, don't we? So, talking to developers, one of the most common reasons for bugs in their app is misunderstanding the framework APIs, stuff around activity lifecycle, fragment lifecycle, and how they live with activities, tasks, flags, activity start on top, activity single mode. And there is no magic solution. As a professionals, we all need to know it. We need to know all these APIs and understand all the tricky corners, because they will come. By the way, one of the ways for me to learn it was just adding logs on callbacks, especially around fragments. So what can you do around the architecture? Make sure it's consistent. Another important thing, when your architecture is consistent, so you would be able to bring new people on board quickly. Always help to have someone experienced. And as we discussed, pick your dependencies wisely. And while designing your app, usually the rule of thumb to think about your app design is your app needs to sleep most of the time and be as fast and as responsive as possible when awakened. So please design around this. Again, of course, there are exceptions to these rules, especially in games. And we are in our last item. You want to guess about what I'm going to present? Okay. Yes, totally. Another really important thing for you to chase after performance issues and other issues is understand your APK, understand your DEX limit, and understand the components or the reasons behind the DEX limit. So for this, I wrote a tool basically to assist me, because I was working with this stuff for almost a year without having anything to assist me. And so this is how Classic Shark, which is an Android dependencies browser, was born. So all in all, this is a link to get it. It's an Android executables browser, meaning you can look for your APKs. And innovation comes from frustration. This is how it looks. There is a tree view and a detail view of the classes. And why you need to know about your executable? DEX limit numbers, obfuscation, especially when you got a bunch of traces with A.A inside B.B. Package counts. Classic Shark provides all the features that you need to understand. Each package inside your APK, how many methods does it take? And a little bit of thought. There are many dependencies in my APK. Why do I need them? Many cases I have seen developers asking themselves, yeah, but why? I thought we removed it. But still, that dependency made its way to their Android executable. And this is something I really don't want you to have. And of course, learning more, I published a bunch of articles about Classic Shark and how to use it here, and also a lot of community contributions. Roberto Orgui published how to shrink your build with no rules. Let me thank you